Hey traders, Cody here, back with another recap of my ES trading for Wednesday, July the 27th, and overall a fairly good day. 3.5 points of profit, which is a solid result, something I'm perfectly happy with. Still 175 per contract, so it's still a decent profit. And of course, if you're trading 5, 10, or even more contracts, I mean, it adds up to a pretty nice result. But sometimes not the easiest of days because it's actually the FOMC day where we do have the FOMC statement and the interest rate announcement. There weren't any changes, but there's still a lot of people who wait on that because it gives a lot of clues to what's going to be happening in the future for interest rate changes. And so it can certainly impact the markets a lot. Usually what will happen is the day before. So for Tuesday, things are pretty limited, things are pretty tight. And then the day of the FOMC announcement, even though the announcement's in the afternoon, things tend to move a little bit better. So we started really tight here, as you can see, really limited, really small range in that pre-market before the market opened here at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. But once we kind of released out of this, we had actually some pretty good moves. So I tried initially a little short here because we had a pretty good little sell-off from an area that had already held a number of times. I was looking for hopefully a break of this area, which I did eventually get, but it held the first time. Now this is one that I almost got taken out of. In these ranging environments, I'm always a lot tighter with stops, and I tend to leave my stops a little bit wider when I'm in a trending sort of environment. So when I'm in these tight ranges, usually as soon as I get that initial move out of my trading area here, I bring my stop in a couple ticks above the swing high. And so in this case, I'm only risking a few ticks. And we came back into what I would consider basically full drawdown on this trade. Came back a couple ticks and ended up working out. So maybe a little bit lucky, but that's how I tend to manage things. I think that's really important is, people tend to do the opposite. In those limited ranges when the market isn't moving well, they tend to get hopeful, get a little bit greedy that price is going to make a break, and they take bigger risks. And then when the market is moving well and is moving in a trend, they tend to tighten things right up, and they're afraid that that trend is going to come to an end. And so they end up tightening things up, moving to break even, getting taken out on pullbacks, and then price ends up moving in their intended direction, and they miss out on the profit. So you kind of have to do that opposite. And in many ways, and many things in trading, you kind of have to do the opposite of what many people would do, what many sort of failed traders would do. But if you can keep your risk pretty tight in those tight ranging environments and open things up a little bit, when the market opens itself up a bit, you're going to do a lot better. And notice that what I'm talking about here is kind of doing things in line with the market rather than doing things based on your own bias or preconceptions and notions of what's going to happen. And that's a really important distinction to trading well in my opinion. So once we got that break, though, I tried an aggressive short here. Now it was very aggressive. It's something else I've kind of been looking at, a little bit more aggressive movements on or entries on some of these breaks when there's sort of low volume conditions. So something I'm kind of testing out a little bit, but no follow through on that. But again, pretty tight risk because things were fairly limited here. Maybe a false break move happening. But once we push back up, I tried one more attempt off of a pretty clear level. And notice for the most part here, I'm kind of trading, off responses to these levels, trying to get, reactions off of these areas where I can expect a bit more order flow. This one didn't fall through. I entered it pretty conservatively in line with this prior level in here. No follow through on that. So I kind of got chopped around a couple times, which can happen in these sort of low volume conditions where it's more difficult for the market to get some continuations. But once that did fail to the upside and couldn't hold within this prior range, it's probably going to test back down again. And that's what happened. There wasn't really a good chance for me to get involved here because we had a high impact news event, which I don't usually want to trade into, but we didn't really get a good pullback anyways. And you can enter really aggressively on these, but I personally would prefer to get a much better price. And sometimes that means I could miss out, but it also means that by getting a better price, by waiting for a more substantial pullback, I can usually keep a much lower risk and take a higher average reward. So for me, having a few less trades is well worth it. That's a good trade-off essentially for me. So this one here almost got a fill. Tried to get in on that a little bit more aggressively because we had a bit of a level forming in here, a little bit of a flip zone, but no real such luck. And then basically just had to wait for another opportunity to short, because I'm not going to look for just a little move up like this to go against all these flows in order to kind of go long. I need a good structural break before I start going long. So I look for something we call a deep level continuation, a trade that some of the more advanced traders and stuff that I work with take. And we had a nice situation here once this level became nicely defined by these tests. And then we held here with some pretty limited momentum. So I was willing to short off of that and just test down into these prior lows in here. And then because the momentum was strong enough and this good prior trend, I was willing to give it one more chance. But no real follow through here. We started to get a little bit of a false break happening. Some trapped traders who were trying to go short right on the breakout rather than on the pullback like I'm doing. So those trapped traders can lead to these moves going the other way, because there's people going short. A little bit of panic can happen as things are coming back. They're basically instantly into drawdown on that breakout, and so they start to panic and shoot things up the other way. So I just, as things weren't following through, just took the small profit in there because of that situation coming into play. But at that point, I basically just called it a day. There was some potential for some other trades in here a little bit later, particularly shorts, because not too much appealing on the long side. But I just called it a day there. After a couple hours trading, I was fairly happy with that result. And a lot of times before that FOMC announcement, things go pretty tight, pretty narrow as we get into that lunchtime, into that afternoon. So there's often not much good trading once you get past the morning on those FOMC days. So I was happy to just call it a day early on. So hopefully you guys had a great day as well. And let me know if there's any questions or anything on this. Be happy to help. See you guys in the next recap.